I'm invisible.
I'm invisible.
You're invisible? Why are you invisible?
I'm a G-H-O-S-T.
Because I'm a G-H-O-S-T.
Back in February 2000, an elderly couple in California listed a painting for sale on eBay. The 1972 oil painting The Hands That Resist Him by, at the time, lesser-known painter William Stoneham. Its sellers described the painting as haunted, stating the characters in the painting, a young boy and little doll girl, play around at night. According to the couple, the figures would even leave the painting and walk around the room. Once, the little boy was threatened by the girl with a gun to leave the painting. The painting was spread around, with people sending it to their friends and families, with some users reporting it made them feel uncomfortable just looking at it. With about 30,000 hits on the page, the painting went about as viral as an eBay listing in the year 2000 could go. The Hands Resist Him had an initial bid for $199, where it snowballed all the way to being sold for $1,025 to the Perception Art Gallery in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The gallery contacted William Stoneham, who was obviously surprised about the popularity of The Hands Resist Him, and even more confused about the reports of the painting being haunted. So here's the real story of The Hands Resist Him. William Stoneham was born in 1947 in Boston, Massachusetts, adopted at a very young age, and eventually moved to Chicago and then Southern California. He got his first art gig in 1972, making work for Charles Fingarten Galleries until 1974, when he debuted with a solo art show. Only a single painting from the show sold, The Hands That Resist Him, which sold to prolific actor John Marley, today known best for his short role as Jack Waltz, the film producer who finds his prized horse's head in his bed in Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. Marley would end up dying 8 years after purchasing the painting after open heart surgery, but ironically Stoneham, after struggling as an artist, would move into the film industry. First working for Academy Award-winning special effects artist Chris Wallace, and then for Industrial Light and Magic, eventually transitioning to the video game studio LucasArts Entertainment in 1992. Stoneham found himself becoming more than just a painter, a multi-talented artist, but his painting from 1972 would reappear in 2000 with an eBay listing.
When we received this painting, we thought it was really good art. A picker had found it abandoned behind an old brewery. At the time, we wondered a little why a seemingly perfectly fine painting would be discarded like that. Today we don't. One morning, our 4.5-year-old daughter claimed that the children in the picture were fighting and coming into the room during the night. Now, I don't believe in UFOs or Elvis being alive, but my husband was alarmed. To my amusement, he set up a motion-triggered camera for the nights. After 3 nights, there were pictures. The last 2 pictures shown are from that stakeout. After seeing the boy seemingly exiting the painting under threat, he decided the painting has gotta go. Please, judge for yourself.
This frankly hilarious, all-caps, non-capital E eBay listing really punctuates perfectly why The Hands Resist Him became such a sensation. The painting is scary, so it must be haunted. As we enter the world of haunted paintings, let's take a look at the textbook aspects we have that will fit many of these stories. 1. An anecdote. Every cursed and haunted object has an anecdote attached. What is the initial reason behind people believing the painting is haunted? In this case, it's the eBay lister believing the children in the painting would move around at night and leave their painting, eventually the girl threatening the boy to leave. 2. A scary painting. This might sound really obvious, but if I try to tell you a pleasant, non-abstract painting is haunted, would you believe me? If I told you Claude Monet's 1875 painting, Woman with a Parasol, Madame Monet and Her Son was haunted, you wouldn't believe me. It's a painting that feels joyous and bright. But if I told you his 1879 painting, Camille Monet on Her Deathbed, was haunted, you'd believe me, despite the subject of the painting being the same. Humans are afraid of loss in the abstract, and what strikes me about many of the paintings considered haunted is that all of them have a surreal and mythical quality. While Stoneham may not be as iconic as Monet, The Hands That Resist Him has become iconic in its own right, the poster child for the concept of haunted paintings in the internet age. Stoneham is a surrealist as seen in many of his works, but I think the scary aspect about this painting is the specificity of it. The art was based on a picture of him at 5 years old.
Where to begin? Well, I've always had a connection to what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. I think we all do. Artists, especially visual artists, are barometers for the currents that run through this collective. Dreams are a common experience people may have with this. Anyway, my own experience is a sensitivity to place, physical, geographical place. There are memories, echoes of all the life within a place. Maybe it's what's called channeling. When I painted The Hands Resist Him in 1972, I used an old photo of myself at age 5 in a Chicago apartment. The hands are the other lives. The glass door, that thin veil between waking and dreaming. The girl, doll, is the imagined companion or guide through this realm.
The interesting part about surreal art is that artists will consciously or unconsciously pull from their real life. The scariest aspects of the painting, the hands at the glass door and the dolls, are something concrete in the mind of Stoneham, even after all these years. But to the couple that got this painting from a picker, all context was gone. The interaction between artist and viewer was only what's left on the canvas. And with or without context, this is a frightening piece. The background dark, oppressive, the child's stare wistful, the doll's eyes sunken. 3, the third and final aspect, and perhaps the most optional to a haunted painting, writing. A weirdly consistent aspect of haunted paintings is a piece of writing attached, and The Hands That Resist Him is no different, being connected to a 1971 poem by relative unknown poet R. Poinsettia.
He is of the seeing visions, his strokes reveal them, in a rush of color, of madness, of mystics. And his head is the highest center. It must confront its enemy. The hands resist him like the secret of his birth. His presence is the sanctum heartbeat, felt in darkness and in passion. Its sound, the sole gift to that silence.
Just 10 lines of prose to accompany this piece, but to be honest, alongside the mountains of context given by Stoneham, we have a really solid understanding of The Hands That Resist Him.
The Hands Resist Him
is an autobiographical piece, a self-portrait of a young Stoneham in a place from his memories, almost as if his 25-year-old self was walking in the body of his 5-year-old self, with the doll as a guide. The Hands That Resist Him is a reference to his biological parents who left him in the care of an orphanage. The R. Poinsettia poem mythologizes the artist, just as the young Stoneham mythologizes himself looking back. There's even a bit of a meta-narrative story here with both the eBay listing and the painting series that followed. A commission in 2004 for a sequel led to the Hand series, starting with Stoneham's 2004 piece Resistance in the Threshold, his first oil painting in years. Resistance at the Threshold showed the boy and the doll again, but the boy has grown into an old man, representing the now 32 years since the original piece. The doll appears more alive and yet more mechanical, floating above the ground. The background is brighter, and the piece is more hopeful and serene. This leads directly into a commissioned sequel to the first commissioned sequel, 2012's The Threshold of Revelation, depicting the old man and the doll, who had now become a real girl. The girl now exploring the dreamscape alongside the old man, who's taken on her previous role as a guide. This culminates in what I find the most compelling sequel piece, 2017's The Hands That Invent Him. The Hands That Invent Him shows a 60-year-old William painting a 25-year-old William, painting a 5-year-old William from beyond the glass in The Hands That Resist Him. Behind this piece that seems haunted was a hungry young artist painting their passion. The area in the glass originally seemed so bleak, and now we can see it brought light to William. And the reignition of his years-long passion led to this piece, a full circle moment. This moment is only interrupted by his final piece, 2021's What Remains. The same window now decrepit and covered in dust and cobwebs. A skull, doll's legs, a child's shoes, and the doll's battery scattered about a fleshy, Giger-esque manner. After seeing all of the eras that these characters go through, there's a fate that awaits us all: death. So, The Hands That Resist Him is definitely not haunted. We can agree that, right? William never thought it was haunted. He made 4 sequel pieces that added on to the story of the original piece, and none of them feel haunted. The original piece is just a scary painting with history. If anything, what made people so uncomfortable online became a source of joy for its painter, eventually getting him recognition and love for painting back. The Hands Resist Him is not a horror story, it's a surprisingly heartwarming one. But what is it about paintings that led so many to believe that they can possess curses or be haunted? Is the anguish of their painters lingering, or is it the physical painting itself that carries memories? Perhaps The Hands Resist Him is haunted, and we can only say it's not because we don't have the physical painting in front of us. Everyone wants to think their work has value, that their soul has some transformative effect on the world, like we have a reason to be here. Why else are you alive? If after years of mastering art, does your heart not seep into every brushstroke? Does your pain and joy not live on the canvas? Does your art not live? And if it haunts you, can it not haunt others? Sonam's painting and story reminded me a lot of another supposedly haunted painting, Death in the Child by Edvard Munch. Death in the Child shows a dying mother next to a young blonde child. Munch's mother and sister Sophie died of tuberculosis while Munch was still young. Munch would depict his mother and Sophie's death throughout his career, much more famously with the Sick Child series, where throughout 40 years, Munch would continually return to the same image over and over again throughout his life, from his origins as an impressionist to becoming the face of expressionism. So why then is one painful moment from Munch's life considered to be haunted, and every other depiction of a similar moment considered not? I think the commonality in Munch's 1889 composition and Sonam's 1972 composition is a lot simpler than it seems. It depicts a figure looking directly at the viewer, in these cases a child that seems under distress. Perhaps it just speaks to the quality of the artist, but Sonam's child self seems distant, like a child you could believe is being threatened, like the eBay listing mentioned. Munch's child in the painting has her hands up to her head in almost disbelief, her eyes wide with shock. Despite being her daughter, the mother ends up being so gray that she melds into the background, like the moment a dead body is no longer human but an object. A similar face to the child would be shown just 4 years later in Munch's most famous work, The Scream. The figures are not the same, but the pose is. As an expressionist, Munch often showed a more subjective worldview in his art as time went on, and the mirroring of these poses can be interpreted similarly: existential dread. What's the first time you experienced dread? The idea that you and other people are mortal and that life might mean way more or way less than you expected. As a child, I went to a few funerals, but the first time I really understood death or dread was when my grandfather died. As a young person, you expect your family to guide you, to be there for you, to help you grow and develop, but death cuts off a connection to that, or at least a material one. A later iteration of Death in the Child shows more figures in the room commiserating and grieving. The mother happier in death, but the child's face is the same. But when Munch returns to the motif again in 1901, he once again tightened the focus. The subject's dread and grief seems louder, not drowned out in the room. The anecdotal source of the painting's hauntedness is reported feelings of being watched by the child's eyes and hearing the rustling of the sheets of the bed. The eyes are a result of what we call the Mona Lisa effect, where when eyes are depicted at certain angles, they will sometimes appear as if they're following you. There's a lot of brain science behind this, but basically the viewer's perception of a gaze is important to our brain's understanding of it. You can subconsciously tell if a subject is looking away from you or looking at you. Death in the child's figure is staring directly at the viewer. It makes sense people would think the eyes are following them. The detail I'm more curious about is the rustling of the sheets. It can be attributed to some degree of a synesthetic effect. Synesthesia describes the relationship between senses and how the brain can correlate and make connections that might not exactly be there. You might associate this with different forms of synesthesia, maybe perceiving words or numbers as colors, but there's all sorts of effects, and perceiving sounds just from visuals can definitely happen. When you see Munch's scream, does your brain fill in the gaps and make a noise? Is it an anguished scream, a resigned scream, a quiet scream? And when you see Death in the Child, what sounds do you imagine? I think haunted paintings are 0 and 2 right now. Neither of these paintings feel as haunted as much of a moment in time crystallized. But here's a couple appetizers before we get to the main course. Bruno Amadio's painting under the name Giovanni Bragolin mass-produced prints of a work called The Crying Boy. There's several variants of the image, all featuring children crying, that were sold throughout Europe in the 1950s to the 1980s. 4 years after Bragolin's death, the paintings would become notable after an article from The Sun interviewing a firefighter who constantly saw Bragolin's works and burnt down houses. It turns out sometimes coincidences are less likely than you think. Bragolin's works were treated with flame-retardant varnishes that kept them safe from fire. Man Proposes God Disposes is known best as the cursed polar bear painting housed in the University of London. Originally painted in 1864 by British artist Sir Edwin Landseer, the painting depicts 2 polar bears tearing apart flesh in the wreckage of Sir John Franklin's ship in their 1845 Arctic expedition. Sir Landseer was primarily a painter of detailed animals, both wild and tame, but notably a lot of his later works took on a dark tone. In the early 20th century, it became an urban legend that students sitting under the painting would fail their exams, leading to a campus tradition of covering the painting with a flag of the Union Jack. In the 2010s, this myth further evolved into a story of students cursed by the painting writing "the polar bear made me do it" in their exams before committing suicide. This is obviously unsubstantiated rumors. If a student really killed themselves and said "the polar bear made me do it," you'd be seeing it on the news. This to me files more neatly into campus tradition than anything. If you look into any local college or school in general, there might be a persistent rumor. A building or a hallway is haunted, a ghost of a person who killed themselves roams the halls, or something like that. Man Proposes, God Disposes is an excellent painting and commentary on British imperialism, but it's probably not haunted. Another painting we can confirm isn't haunted is Filipino artist Juan Luna's Novia, sometimes referred to as Portrait of a Lady. Legend has it that this painting depicts Paz Pardo de Tavera, Luna's wife that he shot and killed just 2 years after the painting's creation. She then possessed the painting, causing misfortune for every owner of the painting, culminating in an exhibition in 1987 at the Metropolitan Museum of Manila, where the spotlight above the painting exploded. It's a fascinating story, and I don't have a gotcha right now to tell you that Juan Luna didn't kill his wife. He has provenly shot her, although he didn't kill her with the initial shot. Paz was found on the floor by neighbors, where she was taken to a hospital and died 11 days later. It seems Luna shot her over accused of adultery, which is ironic because the woman depicted in Novia most certainly isn't her. It appears to be Angela Duce, a model of Luna's that's speculated to be an affair partner. The purpose of my criticism or skepticism on this channel isn't to be cruel to those who believe these stories I critique or necessarily disprove them, but to look at aspects of this story that appeal to our humanity. Maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's the insecurity of human existence, that one day your life could be cut short and no one would care. The nice thing about art and our stories about art is that they crystallize our short, fleeting lives. And now in our modern time, the name Paz Pardo de Tavera lives in a killing out of rage with her face attached to a woman widely to believe her husband's mistress. There's some tragic irony to it. Stories are the only way that a person can live forever. Paz Pardo de Tavera now exists in a weird historical metafiction amongst figures like Cao Cao and Virgil to be shaped into something she isn't after life. It's sad or strange, and it could happen to you. I don't know if I can dispute curses or luck. Our lives are determined by invisible dice rolls and an existence we never choose to take part in, so for her sake, I say Novia is not haunted. We return to England for our last painting, The Anguished Man. The Anguished Man feels like home turf for me, honestly. This is a homegrown YouTube classic. Cumbria man Sean Robinson allegedly inherited the painting from his grandmother. The exact origins of the painting are unknown, but Robinson's mother described the painting as containing the artist's own blood and was made right before they took their own life. Robinson started a YouTube channel, The Anguished Man, and here's where everything falls apart. We live in a world where it is increasingly difficult to tell fact from fiction, where politicians and corporations lie to you with zero consequences and remorse, where people tell you that they made art that they didn't, and entire industries will lie and tell you art that no one made is more important and profitable than something a human touched. Social media can be crowded by bots that make these platforms seem more alive than they are. The biggest refuge from this existence is the same that it always has been: art and stories. Maybe you read a good book that changed your opinion on something, or watched a film that made you feel like life is a little bit more bearable to live in. Maybe a video game has become a source of comfort for you. You can't wait to go see a painting at your local art gallery. All we have in this fragile existence is each other and the stories and expressions of ourselves that we share. So I ask you, why would I ever think a painting with an unknown origin with no external fact-checking that views being recounted by a fucking AI is worth as much breath from my body as any of these other works of art? I don't, and I never will, and yet something compels me, an unseen hand guiding my keystrokes. Maybe The Anguished Man truly is the first haunted painting. It's not. I'm not impressed by Windows Movie Maker. I'm not impressed by Douglas Maxwell's Sea of Doom from the YouTube audio library. I don't think that there's real ghost footage in any of the videos on Robinson's The Anguished Man. If anything, I think sounds that can be explained as house settling and doors that can be pulled with wires isn't evidence of anything. Video-wise, The Anguished Man is the most documented painting on this list, and because of that, it feels the least real to me. Let's address the ghost-shaped elephant in the room. Despite what books or Zach Baggins tells you, there's no evidence for or against the existence of ghosts. And ironically, that lack of evidence is the most compelling case for ghosts. You can't disprove something you can't see. You can't touch something that isn't real. There's no olfactory qualities to a presence that can be measured in its attachment to the material plane. What happens to us after death is a fate debated upon by priests, scholars, and philosophers, used upon people close to death. And ghosts are present in most cultures. Dybbuk, Poltergeist, Preta, La Llorona, Moroi, Shades, Onryo, Buta, Yurei, Hatif, and many, many more. By sheer cultural volume, people from most corners of the globe have ghost stories. We're fascinated by death and the idea that we may never be able to move on. So could Robinson's haunted painting of unknown origin really make sounds and move objects? It pains me to say this, but no, I don't think it is. I don't know if Sean painted it himself. I don't know if Sean has intentionally been manipulating the scenery of his videos. If it feels like softball arguments, we're dealing with softball material. With any of these paintings, one of them could be haunted. I hope it's the polar bear. Regardless of how I think about the presentation of the Anguished Man as a haunted painting, the painting itself is great. A dark blue background contrasted against this orange screaming face is a powerful image reminiscent ironically of the expressionist work of Edvard Munch. Art is something to be celebrated and imbued with human spirit and emotion. It could feel haunted, and despite everything I said about the Anguished Man, I think it at least deserves that. I think back to my analysis of SCP-99, where even that object wasn't described as a curse painting, but one that makes you feel uncomfortable and erratic. SCP was a setting with rules, but still very, very open. So why then did the original SCP-99, the Mona Lisa, not declare that the fucking Mona Lisa was haunted? I think it might be because it produces the same effect, discomfort. Good art can make you uncomfortable, but it can also bring you great joy. Sorry if my arguments don't move you, but we're at an impasse. I can't disprove something you can prove. This logic can be applicable to haunted locations, objects, etc. The pathos of our stories of our lives will one day get etched into the material, and that may be the only proof of our existence. Why wouldn't we cling on to that idea? Are these paintings the only way we'll remember Bill Stoneham, Edvard Munch's mother, the wreckage of Sir John Franklin's expedition, Pasparto de Tavera, and eventually Sean Robinson? Maybe, but I'm glad we remember them at all. Hey everyone, this is Milk_OHK. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I've got a lot of really exciting things coming up soon. Just wanted to give a big thank you to everyone who managed to watch the Pokemon Creepypastas video. I was really surprised when that hit 100,000 views and I finally hit 1,000 subscribers. It really, really means a lot for me. I've worked very hard on YouTube for years and years and years, so it is nice to see that finally paying off to some degree. But yeah, really, really excited for the future. Hope that you all enjoyed this one as well. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.